All right, what's up, everyone? We're back here with another YouTube Live. We're talking all things Oklahoma Sooners. So, if you guys have any comments, make sure you go ahead and put those in the comments right now. We would appreciate that. But first and foremost, before we get started, if you haven't yet, make sure to click subscribe to our channel. We've got all things coming your way: football content, softball content, podcasts, these lives, all that. Again, yes, if you have not yet, make sure you go drop your comments in the comments. We're going to get to all those, talking about everything Oklahoma Sooners. Today, Oklahoma baseball made the NCAA tournament for baseball. They're going to be going to Virginia. So that was kind of the biggest news of the day for Oklahoma Sooners. Yeah, we got Mars Jams in here saying, "Let's go, Boomer Sooner."
And
Again,
really, hey, Brody,
yeah,
really, it was kind of shocking where they ended up. I was honestly thinking they'd be in the Fayetteville regional or Fayetteville
yeah.
side if they did squeak in. And outside of that East Carolina matchup, which will be definitely a tough matchup, this is actually a pretty good regional for OU, I think.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you went from, I think one of the predicted ones was them having to play Dallas Baptist in the first round and Arkansas in the second, which is not an ideal draw at all. But I mean, this one was certainly a good draw for Oklahoma. It's going to be interesting. But you got softball also going right now. They'll be taking on. They got a big game coming up this week. And Jeremy, I know y'all talk about it here on the channel a lot, which is another reason why, if you're watching, you need to go make sure you subscribe, because our softball videos they're only starting to get started. But Jason
Yeah,
says
Traver and I are actually putting together an article about if this OU softball team is the best women's sports team in history, looking at a comparison with them against the UConn basketball team and the Tennessee under Pat Summitt, and kind of where Gasso is and where this team is. But they have a chance to do.
yeah. If you, I mean, that is certainly a big thing. Is they might be the best team in all of sports like history. So that's going to be interesting. Mars Jam says, "I hope we play Arkansas. I am getting tired of their fans." Yeah, their fans. I mean, in all the sports, that "Woo Pig Suey" chant they do, I can't stand it. But that's just me. So that's again, Jeremy.
That's because you're in Arkansas country, Brody.
Yeah, I know. The whoop, they do get annoying. Not in
No,
football. Not in football season, they're not that annoying, but they do get annoying. So again, if you haven't yet, just keep dropping those comments. We're going to get to all of them, whether it's about football, basketball, softball, baseball, whatever it may be. We'll get to them. Another quick thing that I want to mention here with Sooner Surge is something we are planning on doing throughout the offseason, the rest of the offseason. We're going to bring in this new Throwback Thursday series. So this is going to be where we're going to kind of talk about and break down and watch highlights from and all that from certain past games that have been like, favorite games. So if you haven't, like, drop your favorite past Oklahoma football games here in the comments, and we'll go ahead and get to those on that new series. But again, just another reason to subscribe if you haven't yet. But yeah, Oklahoma baseball, big news. I mean, I would like to play Arkansas and beat Arkansas. I think, I don't like their fans either, but they are very good in baseball.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what all you guys have gone over or not because I just joined. But basically, if OU had to play Arkansas in baseball, that's not a favorable matchup for OU. One, due to the lack of depth pitching wise. And it's the SEC team, and the SEC's, I believe they're hosting 8 regionals.
Yeah, the SEC is ridiculous in baseball.
So it truly is just an incredible conference. And I don't know if OU really has the power or the talent, as I would say, to match up with any SEC team in a 3-game series. Now, maybe if it was a 1-game series and if OU came in and played a very, very good game, then they could beat them. But in a 3-game series, I just don't think OU is the depth pitching wise.
Yeah, it's certainly going to be interesting. Going to be interesting to see who they go with on Friday night in that first game. James Thrice is in here saying personal favorite OU versus Nebraska 07 Big 12 championship. So, yeah, just keep rolling those.
I could be wrong on that. Was that the comeback? where OU made that massive comeback versus Nebraska, or is that a different year?
That might have been. But what
Exactly.
is the SEC not ridiculous? And what is the SEC not ridiculous? And that's a great question. They're good in every single sport. That's why it is the best conference in America. Jackson just kind of talked to me about Oklahoma's game. Let's just kind of start talking about softball real quick, about the upcoming Women's College World Series on Thursday at 1:30. The Sooners will take on Stanford. I think, on our channel, in the comments and on our channel, like, one of the biggest things has been Florida State is the biggest challenger for Oklahoma in this series. So who would you say the biggest challenger for Oklahoma is in the remaining field?
I think it's Tennessee because they're the hottest team that's in this tournament right now. Now, you look at a team like Utah that's in the tournament. They were really kind of a low seed in the Pac-12, and they made this run, and obviously they're hot. But I just don't see a team like that being able to keep it up in the softball tournament. It's not because they're not a good team, but just there's teams like OU, Florida State, and Tennessee, which are really the three top teams. And you look at a team that was basically 2 errors away from going to the national championship series last year in Oklahoma State. And they their ace, Kelly Maxwell, we saw what she did last year in the NCAA tournament. She dominated basically everyone she played, except the game in which her team committed 2 errors and one play on allowed Texas to score 3 runs, and which was the end of Oklahoma State season. As Jason said, never kind of Alabama. Alabama does not have the offense, okay? I'm sorry, but I doubt they'd be able to score 2 runs on OU. They struggled against Northwestern, and their pitcher, she's okay. OU played her last year, actually, in the NCAA tournament, and she was not that impressive.
Hey, sorry I got kicked off, but hey, yeah, Montana Fouts is a great pitcher, but so is Cagle, guys. Cagle's a great pitcher, and OU showed what they can do. I'd be more worried about a team that had a lot of offense than a team that's got a dominant pitcher, personally.
Yeah, we got the man with the plan, Jimmy Satterfield, in here, and he says Florida State is tough. Yeah, I
agree with that. They're actually a team that scares me almost. If anyone scares me, I don't think anyone scares me, but they're definitely a tough out, as there was a tough game earlier in the season with them.
Yeah.
Well, Jason said OU seems to light up the great pitchers this year. I don't know who OU honestly hasn't lit up this year. So, I mean, I would say Florida State. I think, Jeremy, maybe you can help me on this. Didn't OU beat them, was it 3-2 or 4-3 in Norman earlier this year?
Man, I'd have to look to see the exact score. I don't want to quote something incorrectly, but it was a close game. I do know that.
Yeah.
And the thing is, there's a lot of intriguing matchups and a lot of storylines that are huge with Donahue at Tennessee. That's a huge storyline. With all the Gassos being together with Utah, that's a massive storyline. It's a very intriguing World Series.
4-3. Hey, real quick, I know it's kind of off topic. Jeremy, you weren't in here when we was talking about this, but we mentioned the Throwback Thursday stuff, and James Thrice was talking about the Nebraska 07 game. You remember much of that?
Which game? The Nebraska 07?
It was in 06.
Championship game.
They played Missouri in 2007. It's
06 for Big 12 title.
Let's see, I'm trying to think if that would have been Paul Thompson year. No.
Was that the comeback against Nebraska?
The comeback against Nebraska, Brian said that was in 2010.
Okay. 2010.
Yeah, again, the Throwback Thursday for
I'm
the
pretty sure Paul Thompson led OU to was that against Nebraska? I'd have to really look at that game and remember who
if you guys in the comments know, go ahead and drop it in there. But
is it the Paul Thompson game? You guys in the comments.
Yeah, and if you haven't, make sure we're doing this new Throwback Thursday series here on our YouTube. We're going to be doing that starting this week, every Thursday leading up to the season. So if you haven't, drop in the comments your favorite OU games from the past, favorite games and all that. So, yeah, I guess we can keep talking about that here in the comments. He says, "You young pups before your time." LOL. Yeah,
mean, that's pretty accurate.
It is accurate. But again, any comments about baseball, softball, basketball, football, we'll get to all those. Jumping back to softball, there's a lot of storylines in the World Series that are very interesting. Like you think about Utah, that is one that could be very interesting.
And there's actually a storyline that isn't talked about with OU, and that's what's going to happen with Alex Storako. We've seen her in her last couple starts. She's been a little bit rocky, hasn't been on her A game. It'll be interesting what OU chooses to do with her. On Thursday, I expect them to roll out with Nicole May. I would be my guess. And then Saturday, if they win, I would expect Jordy Ball to pitch. But I would say there's a chance we could maybe see Storako get the chance against Stanford on Thursday. But I do not expect Jordy Ball to pitch due to the fact you're wanting to save her for Saturday. And Stanford, I believe, they would be the lowest rated team since they're playing OU. Isn't that correct?
Yeah. Jeremy, they're saying the Paul Thompson OU win was in 06.
Is that the one they were talking about, though?
Brian says 21-7 in 06. Paul Thompson was the QB.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that was Paul Thompson, Alan Patrick. Was it Alan Patrick, the running back? I'd have to look.
Brian says that was the game Malcolm Kelly did the rap after the game in the locker room.
Paul Thompson, guys, was an interesting guy because he had great leadership characteristics. He really wasn't, I wouldn't say talent-wise, one of the top guys, but they got as much from that guy as anyone I've seen. Stoops got so much from him. The fact that they won Big 12 titles that year, honestly, is pretty amazing, honestly. Maybe one of his best coaching jobs.
Yeah. I don't believe Paul Thompson was he more of an athlete, Jeremy, or was he more?
He was definitely athletic, but he wasn't really a runner either. He kind of settled into this pro-style quarterback, I guess you could say, but he made pretty accurate throws. He definitely wasn't a guy who just chunked it around the field. But I actually went to the A&M game, trying to remember what year that would have been, around that time at A&M at Kyle Field, and Paul Thompson led that comeback in that game, and actually Alan Patrick had a massive drive to win that game from him, and that may have been the same year, but that was definitely an interesting season for OU for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Jackson. Let's just what has been your favorite Oklahoma football game you've ever watched?
Ooh, this is hard because there's two of them.
And everyone else in the comments, drop yours.
The first game that comes to mind is the 2019 against Baylor. I think that
was a great comeback.
There was that, and then I would say probably the Baker Mayfield game against Ohio State. I mean, wasn't Ohio State ranked number 1 in the country?
They were one of the best teams in the country at that
time. They were 1 or 3, I'm not for sure, but that was just like a Baker Mayfield signature moment, his game, where like, okay, he's that dude.
I agree. Yeah. Hey, you guys are young pups. I actually grew up with Jamel Holloway.
Yeah.
And Orange the Fumble Rooski was run by OU, and Keith Jackson coming down the middle of the field as a tight end. And then, of course, living through the John Blake era, where maybe the best player they had in that era was a guy named Brandon Daniels, who ended up moving to quarterback. I saw some interesting things in that era. And then, of course, from 95 on and in 99 on since Stoops got there. But there's been so many classic games. But, yeah, I've seen so many classics. I don't even know what I would rank as my top game that I've witnessed. Had they beaten Georgia, that would have been the one. That game was unbelievable, guys, but didn't come through with the win. But
I hate that's. Brian says his favorite game, OU game, was Texas 2001. If you like defense, that's the game for you.
Oh yeah, the Superman play, for sure. Beating Chrissy Sims. Oh, that's definitely on the list.
And then we got Jimmy saying 86 OU Nebraska game was a classic.
Yeah, if I was 9 years old on that time.
Yeah. Go ahead.
One of the classic games, and it wasn't. If you think about how bad OU's defense was, but they had some absolute unbelievable games with West Virginia in West Virginia. I don't know if you guys remember Landry Jones era. They're like 60 to 59, and I mean those games are insane. And actually, the OU OSU game with Joe Mixon,
yeah,
it was one of the best. That primetime game when it's kind of Hollywood Brown, and I mean that was a great game.
And then you got the shootout in Lubbock one with Mayfield and Mahomes too. That was a very good game. And then we talked about it on the podcast last night. If you haven't, make sure you go listen to it. The Tennessee game was a very good game. The one in Knoxville, that one was a great game. Sterling Shepard with the end zone dive. That was a great play.
Yeah. And it's just like I said on the podcast last night, was that's the really earliest memory I have of OU is that game. And also I have a little bit of memories from Trevor Knight and Blake Bell. That's like the first one I really remember. And Mars Jam said,
this is another one we talked about on Jeremy and Jason talked about this one a lot on the pod, was the Marshall interception against Texas A&M.
Yeah. I see. That's actually a play that I want to go back and watch in my free time that I'm going to try and get to, is maybe go back and watch some of these older OU football games. Because I have gone back and watched the 2000 National Championship one time, but I don't remember a lot from that game. Because that was more of a defensive game. But Jeremy, how much do you remember of the 2000 National Championship?
I got to get all of it. I got to get my phone plugged in because it's about dead. I just got home, but that game, the same guy stands out. Torrance Marshall, when in the coin flip, said he's going to get the Heisman back from Chris Winkie. You got my boy's Heisman.
Hey, Jackson, Brian says only watch the fourth quarter in OT of that Tennessee game. The first three quarters are that is very much true. And then talking about 2012 West Virginia, that game was 50-49.
That's the one I'm thinking of.
Landry Jones was 38 for 51, 554 yards, 6 touchdowns, and an interception. Damian Williams was the leading rusher. He ran for 92 yards. And Jalen Saunders had a great game with 123 yards in that game. But Landry Jones.
Damian Williams was in the league for years. I mean, I think he won a Super Bowl with Kansas City.
He did with the Chiefs.
And Landry Jones could have cemented himself as one of the best quarterbacks in OU history had he not had so many blunders and just weird plays, dude. That guy, he put up so good of numbers, but there'd be plays he'd drop back and go to pass and hit the ball. He'd lose the ball just as he's going back to pass. Like, he had so many. One was in the Florida State game. He had so many weird plays and turnovers that that really is what hurt him as far as his legacy, I think, from being one of the best, because he had the arm strength, he had the size, he could make any throw. I mean,
that game was when West Virginia had Geno Smith and Tavon Austin. Tavon Austin ran for 344
torched us. He was the receiver, and they put him back at tailback for that game.
You talk about one of the most electric players to ever play college football. That's Tavon Austin for you. That dude had some of the most mind-blowing plays you'll ever see.
Hey, Brian's talking about losing Heupel. That was a major deal for Jones, and I don't know off the top of my head the time period, but when Chuck Long was at OU and then went elsewhere, and I'm trying to think who came in after Heupel as far as quarterback coach, but that definitely had an effect on Landry Jones. I agree with that, Brian.
Yeah. And speaking of QBs, This is a question I want to hear what the people in the comments have to say, because it's been debated a lot on our podcast about Dylan Gabriel and Jackson Arnold. Who would you guys want to see start week 1? Dylan Gabriel or Jackson Arnold, and drop why as well.
Well,
But
I'll tell you right now, it doesn't matter if you want to see Jackson Arnold starting week 1. It's going to be Dylan Gabriel starting week 1 as long as he's healthy, regardless of if you'd rather see Jackson Arnold. I said it on the pod last night. I mean, Gabriel hasn't been healthy for a full season in his whole career, I believe. So
yeah,
if he gets injured, I don't see a way where Jackson Arnold gives up that starting position. I think if Arnold starts one game, he's your starter. But who would you want to see? It's an interesting question. I'd be curious to see what people would say on it. But I think regardless, it's going to be Dylan Gabriel, taking that first snap against Arkansas State, even if, Jackson Arnold is what he think he is. But Jennifer Cornejo says JFA will take over in Red River rivalry. That could happen. It very much could. If Dylan Gabriel goes down, then I think Jackson Arnold are going to come in and not give that spot back up. That is just my prediction. If Gabriel gets hurt, and obviously we hope Gabriel doesn't go down this year.
And also, like, the truth of the matter is that Dylan Gabriel, he would have to have an absolutely abysmal season without him getting hurt for him to lose that job. Dylan Gabriel, you look at it, he has the experience. Obviously, he's not one of the elite quarterbacks that's played for OU, and we can all agree on that. But he's not someone that's just an absolute bum. Like, so a lot of OU fans like to act like Dylan Gabriel's the worst quarterback to ever step foot on this campus. And like we've seen it on Twitter. Obviously, he's not perfect. He does have his issues with overthrows. And also, he's shown lack of being able to go through reads, being so experienced. But last year, I think part of that was due to him being so reliant on Marvin Mims. And obviously, with Marvin Mims being a third-round pick in the NFL draft, the dude obviously had a lot of talent. And Dylan Gabriel, I'm sure there was points in the season where he only wanted to throw to Marvin Mims, just like I said, because of how talented he was. But really, Dylan Gabriel is not that bad of a quarterback, and he's a guy that you can win a Big 12 championship with. And Brody, do you
Jackson, what you just said, the statement you just made, it is what's concerning when you say he's not that bad of a quarterback. This is the University of Oklahoma. We don't want to say things like that bad, because what that implies is he's not the guy that we need. But I also agree with you that he's a good quarterback. But the health concerns is a concern, because if you go back to last year, after that injury that he had, okay, he was not the same after it. He didn't look to run the ball when he got flushed out of the pocket. He was definitely skittish in the pocket, more so after that. And I think that is a concern for me. And I'm interested to see if Lebby's going to use him with his feet more, because I think he's okay at running the ball, but with that hit and the concussion issue, and I'm also concerned about health for him, because he hasn't played a full season in years.
Having Arnold should help with being a little bit more comfortable in running DG. But we've got some comments to get to here. Jimmy says the SMU game will be a test for the defense because they are stacked at their skill position players. That is very much true.
Well,
Brian says Dylan Gabriel needs a good O-line and a running game. I definitely agree with that. Derek says Dylan may break the top 5 of all time passing this season.
That's true.
What are we talking about?
That's true.
That is true.
His flowers. I agree with that.
Mars Jam says, I'd rather see DG start and finish the season strong. Oh, yeah, I'd love to see DG start and finish the season strong. I think that's probably your ideal scenario, because you maybe you don't want to throw Jackson Arnold out there into the fire, maybe. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But I would hope that Dylan Gabriel can stay healthy and finish the season strong.
What would he have to get to be top 5 at OU?
It's like 37. It's
100?
like 3,700 something yards away, I believe. And can you go back to that comment from Jimmy for a second?
Yeah, the SMU game. Yeah.
You talk about first of all, a guy, if you follow recruiting, two guys OU fans are really familiar with: Jordan Hudson, who was committed to OU, and Kamar Wheaton, a guy who felt like it was going to be a Sooner and be like DeMarco Murray's first win on the recruiting trail, such an elite level. And they also, LJ Johnson from Texas A&M transferred there, and they also have, obviously they lost Rasheem Rice to the NFL, and their quarterback Preston Stone, he was a highly touted 4-star guy, their highest recruit to ever sign with SMU at a high school. So you talk about an SMU offense that's not lacking in any sort of talent, and it is going to be a test. And SMU, I don't think they're going to be OU, but it's going to be a sneaky good game that OU is going to have this year.
Oh, I agree. Here we go. Passing yards doesn't equate to titles, though. Look at Landry Jones. 16K yards or so in his junior and senior years were disappointing. Yeah, passing yards does not equate to titles. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting. I would hope Dylan Gabriel has made good improvements throughout the offseason. I really do think he has. But like you mentioned with the progression stuff, and he needs to hit Austin Stogner over the middle. He'll have to do that. His deep balls last year, some of them were a bit overthrown, I think overthrown was the majority of what they were. But I think the using his legs is something you will see more of. Derek says, remember that Caleb was a 3-2 as a starter as a freshman, with one of those taking a miracle against Kansas, but it is overshadowed by Texas comeback. True freshman playing isn't ideal. We need Dylan to ball out, and the defense will be the defense. I completely agree with that. I think the defense is going to have to be the difference, and we do need Dylan to ball out.
And last year, too, that really shows what not having a superhuman quarterback can do for you. Not having a very good defense is that it can come back to hurt you in close games. It can't, because we like the defense last year. What they was like 101st overall. They were ranked or something like that.
Yeah, and the offense had their moments where they were like, you look at the first quarter of Bedlam, like that was impressive. But then the last 3 quarters offensively, it wasn't so impressive. So he says, all I'm saying, if Gabriel starts missing routine passes high again, we're in trouble.
Well, true. A lot of that was mainly on deep balls. That was his issue. Was he couldn't?
Well, there are a couple issues, and look, we're talking at an elite level here at University of Oklahoma, where if you go back to the quarterbacks of the last decade, right? OU's been spoiled, but there are routine. Was that Brian that said that? Routine throws that he's not made that were game changers, guys. I can go back to several last year that they weren't just deep balls. They were wheel routes out of the running back or something out of the backfield, and just didn't get it to him when they needed it. It was behind them. And guys, 2 telling things to me for Dylan Gabriel: 3rd down conversions. Okay, 3rd down conversions. A lot of that is on the quarterback a lot, because you got to make the throw in the big time moment or make the right read.
Yeah,
and pressure situations. He wasn't great under pressure when pressure got to him. So I think those are 2 areas I hope he can improve on. And also the third one would be making progressions quicker instead of locking in on that first guy if it's there or not. But those 3 things are all things that you can improve on. It's not like, so that's what I hope is the pressure of Jackson Arnold being there under him waiting, that's going to spur him to be better. That's what you got to hope as Sooner fans. It has caused him to be a better quarterback, to be quicker on his reads, to be better working on his footwork and all those things. And then pray he stays healthy, and that Jackson Arnold, whether they do a package for him or not, don't know. But otherwise he, is able to redshirt all year and then come out next year.
Yeah, we'll get into some comments, but one thing I want to point out about DG is in the Florida State game, I don't know if anyone else saw this, but I saw like a different type of DG. He had a little bit more swagger to him. I'm hoping that's the type of DG we'll get all year this year. But Brian says can't go 3 and out in less than a minute like we did so much last year. That is a big thing. I agree. I think they're going to have to kind of be selective with the tempo offense. I think that'll help. Derek says Caleb made a bad team look good. We should have lost a lot more that year. I agree with that. Derek goes again and says top 15 offense ain't bad. Defense killed us last year. No depth. Yeah, I hope that I really do think they solved a lot of the depth issues. But Jeremy, we got a question for you saying to talk about the Jeff Lebby philosophy. This will be a good one.
Well, no, someone else just mentioned the 3 and outs earlier too.
Jeremy. I see this as your brother trying to attack you.
Well, no, look, the Lebby philosophy is when you go 3 and out, it can't be in a minute. I mean, all this really depends on game situation and situational calls and things. But I think if you put the true serum in Lebby, he would say that he probably ran things a little too quickly in situations. And part of that's on Venables as the leader of the team. He's going to and I think they probably had those conversations. I think there are times that OU could have run the ball more last year and stuck with the run more a little bit. And that may have helped Gabriel. There's a lot of things that they could have done better on that side, but I do agree with the depth issues and the defensive side. Last year, you want to say maybe you give Venables a pass with everything, but this year with some guys that came in and who they have depth-wise, especially in the secondary, that I think we should see a massive improvement on that side of the ball. And if we don't, there is major cause for concern, guys.
Yeah, we got some questions talking about depth in the linebackers. Derek says Stutz and them guys were gassed. I do agree. And I think part of that was because David Ugwoegbu, Danny Stutzman, and Deshaun White played literally every single snap. Jimmy talks about the linebackers saying, how many freshman linebackers will get playing time this year? Are we talking redshirt freshmen or are we talking true freshmen? Because if we're talking true freshmen.
I'm going to go with true freshman.
Okay, talking true freshman, Jackson, I know you're high on Lewis Carter. I certainly think Lewis Carter can play on special teams. I don't see him playing at linebacker. But for me to answer that question, I would say you would hope 0 true freshmen would get playing time.
No, but I would think Kanik and McKenzie both should get major playing time as redshirt freshmen.
Yeah, right? And when I say you would hope 0 true freshmen, I'm not saying that because I don't want to see them play. I'm saying you would hope that the Kanik and McKenzie and Kip Lewis, like those guys can hold down that position well enough. Maybe we do see Phil Pichotti get some decent reps. But, yeah, Jackson, do you think Lewis Carter is going to play a lot this year?
See, I love Lewis Carter because Brent Venables, the first time we got to hear him talk about him, he called him the best player in Florida. And also he's fast and physical, and that's what Brent Venables wants his defense to be focused around. I do think that Lewis Carter does have a chance to play, but I think realistically with them bringing in a transfer guy like Connor Neer, that just adds more depth into that room. And Connor Neer was really good at the Division II level. Like, people don't understand that, and it's a lot like Kendall Dolby. You bring him in that for a guy that can boom, has the potential to boom, but also, if anything, he can just be a depth guy for you. Now, I hope to see Lewis Carter on the field because he's probably the guy maybe I'm the most high on in this recruiting class that's not a 5-star. But yeah, Brody, just like you said, I just see it being too hard for him to play with Connor Neer not coming in.
Hey, Jeremy, I'll attribute this mostly to you because me and Jackson can't really comment on this too much. But Brian says, I look at last year a lot like 99, had some players, but were vastly better. Kalmus and Marshall played 10 times better in 2000 than they did in 99.
I actually, but right before he typed that, I said Stutzman and Kanik remind me a lot of the group. Actually, Stutzman and Kanik, you had Marshall, you had Kalmus, and you had even Teddy Lehman, a young guy, was this linebacker crew reminds me a lot of some of those guys that they've had in the past and the improvement that, especially, the correlation, that was what I was going to even work on an article about, was the correlation between the 99 team and 2000 compared to this team and last year. There's a lot of similarities in the way that they were very close last year. And in 99, they had some near losses, like real close losses that year, and then next year came out and went undefeated. There are a lot of similarities. And actually, guys, here's another one. Dylan Gabriel and Josh Heupel are very similar.
Sure.
In the way that they approach the game, I think that Heupel was probably maybe better as far as progressions and knowing, where to put the ball. And Heupel was so great in the pocket when the pressure got to him. He would just kind of side step out of the pressure and be able to, and he was always looking downfield to make the throw. And if Gabriel can do that, guys, this team is very much like that team was. The defense is coming around. They got dudes at linebacker finally. The secondary in 2000 was unbelievable with Derek Straits of the world and JT Thatchers. And this team is very similar. So I like that comparison that Brian made there too. It's exactly what I was thinking.
Jimmy says, what about Sammy O? Will he be a Cheetah? I've heard he's going to start out at Cheetah. I don't know if he'll actually play Cheetah, but that's where he'll start out. Okay, we got thoughts on Harrington this year. Okay, I'm very high on Justin Harrington. Nothing but good things I've heard about him. I mean, he was obviously the starting Cheetah in the spring game, but there's still fall camp, and Deshaun McCullough is not going to be easy to hold off for Harrington. So I wouldn't be shocked if you see Harrington actually playing safety this year opposed to Cheetah. I wouldn't be shocked if Deshaun McCullough – I mean, if Harrington's one of your best 11, they're going to find a way to get Harrington on the field. And if McCullough is one of your best 11, they're going to find a way to get both of them on the field. So it wouldn't shock me if we see when they go to that 3 safety look like they did last year. Last year they started Damone Harmon as the 3rd safety. Maybe this year that guy's going to be Justin Harrington. So I very much could see that. Harrington also put out a tweet about like him and Billy Bowman are going to shock the world as the top safeties or something, which was a little bit interesting to me. But, yeah, I think Harrington is going to contribute this year, and I think he is going to be he's going to play a large role on the defense.
Yeah, and the thoughts on Justin Harrington is the dude's just got to show us on the field. He has all the physical tools, an elite athlete. You talk about whenever he transferred to OU, I believe he was the number 1 defensive transfer out of junior college. He was junior college defensive player of the year. I could be wrong on that. But Jeremy Brody, I don't know if you guys could help me on that. But Justin Harrington, man, if you get someone like him, if he can put it all together through the playbook, the ceiling for him is a 1st-round draft pick.
Well,
he has all the tools he needs. He just needs to put it together.
And it sounds like he's one of the main leaders on this defense, and that BV has very high expectations for him this season. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Hey, another comparison with that 2000 team I was thinking is the D-line. The D-line that year in 2000 was not Tommy Harris and the biggest studs they've ever had. It was like Ramon Richardson and Corey Callens and guys that were just super hard workers, maybe not 5-star guys, and that's kind of what they got right now with some of the guys that they got in the middle of the D-line. Now, I hope Grayson Halton can maybe fill one of those roles as far as being the guy there. But
we talk about in OU, the biggest question mark they have on this team this year is, wide receiver and interior defensive line. Those are the 2 question marks that most people are wondering about. And on the interior defensive line, it's like Isaiah Coe, he's flashed where he can be an all Big 12 caliber player. Jordan Kelly, he's consistent. You know what you're going to get out of him. But is it like, can Grayson Halton step up? Yeah.
I'll give you a name, interior defensive line, that I really think is going to have a big year this year.
I already know who you're going to say.
Who am I going to say?
Evan Gilliam.
Yes, I'm all in it. If he can be healthy, I don't know if you guys have heard the way that Todd Bates talks about him, but he was hurt in spring. And Todd Bates basically said if that guy was healthy, he'd be running with the ones right now. So very interesting to see the way he talks about him. He's got a big body, good frame. And he played a decent amount last year before he got hurt. So if he can stay healthy, I really think he's going to be the type of guy that can surprise a lot of people on the interior defensive line. And if you haven't, make sure you go check out Surge Sports Network. I'm going to have an article about 5 wild card players to keep an eye on in the 2023 season. I'll have that out. And let me say, Gilliam is one of those players. But another player on the defensive line that I think could really be a good contributor for this team, interior, is Jonah Laulu.
Mm-hmm. And I believe Todd Bates called him the most natural pass rusher they have, and also some that ability helps because he did play edge. So
Yeah.
it's really kind of like a wait and see into the fall is who plays himself out on the interior defensive line and shows because Jeremy, I'm right with you in the Grayson Halton boat. If the dude can put it together, if he can put on that extra 10 to 15 pounds this summer with Jerry Schmidt that he needs to, he will be one of the starting interior defensive linemen. I think that's fair to say. And right now, if I had to put my money on two guys to start week one, it's Isaiah Coe and Jordan Kelly, just due to the experience factor. And you kind of know what you're going to get out of those guys. But outside of that, week 12, Brody, just like you said, I think it has a chance to be Kevin Gilliam and Grayson Halton.
Something with Grayson Halton is he wasn't holding weight that well. He switched his personal trainer now.
Okay.
And apparently now he's able to really hold the weight. So I would expect him to put on some good weight this summer, which would be huge because, I think he's got the tools to be really good. We heard David Stone say the Batman and Robin comment about him and Grayson Halton. So that's also pretty interesting. But, yeah.
It's just like – and also I guess the thing that we probably need to hit on is the wide receiver room. And if you're in the chat, I would like to get your thoughts on that. But who do you guys think will be wide receiver 3 by week 1? Brody, Jeremy?
That's a tough question. I'll say there's 5 that I think it could be. LV Bunkley Shelton, Andrell Anthony, Nick Anderson, Jaden Gibson. I'll give you 6. So I might as well just name the whole room, but I'll give you 6. DJ Graham and Jaquez Petaway. We got an interesting comment saying Stoops would be wide receiver 3.
You didn't name Drake Stoops.
Drake Stoops, I'm saying he's the wide receiver 2.
Wide receiver 2 and Farouk.
I think that's pretty obvious that Farouk and Stoops will be the two of the top 2 ones.
And
yeah, to me, those 2 guys are locks. But that third one it's so up in the air. And there's honestly, I think to me, if you ask me who I think is the guy, it's between 2 guys in my opinion. It's Nick Anderson and Gibson. But that's just me personally. I would love to see Nick Anderson because of his physicality. He's got something that some of the other guys don't have, and I'd love to see Gibson because
Jeremy.
Yeah, Gibson has shown he can, like we've said, get open, and he's got breakaway speed. But you got Brennan Thompson coming in. You got Petaway. There are so many guys that can fit the mold of speed and be able to do some things down the field. But
Andrell Anthony, they view him as the deep threat, so that's very interesting. LV Bunkley Shelton has a great route running ability. He's
the one I'm not super high on, though.
Yeah, I don't know. Rewatching the spring game, he actually stood out a little bit. But he's got good speed and all that. It's just like last year I think he enrolled in the summer and he never really kind of got it all going. But yeah, the wide receiver room, it's very, very interesting as far as how
who would you compare Nick Anderson? If Nick Anderson's healthy and is what everyone says he is, who would you compare him to? Because he's got bigger size. He's bigger than CeeDee Lamb was.
Yeah, Nick Anderson, it's kind of hard to compare him to anyone, really, because you haven't seen him play in-game yet. And that's the thing that obviously – and Jason brought up a great point in the chat. Gavin Freeman, that's a guy we didn't even say as well.
Yeah, I look at him as the backup slot guy behind Stoops.
Yeah, but he's true. Like this wide receiver room is just crazy with just really there's a lot of depth and it's good depth. It's healthy competition in this room, but also it's like who's going to step up and be the guy that you can trust to make plays because Jaden Gibson, he has the physical tools. He just has had issues with drops. We saw it in the spring game. We saw it in a couple games this last year where he just dropped a couple passes. And Jason, yeah, he said he has the size of Malcolm Kelly. Is that right?
Yeah, and Brian did too. This Brian, you and I think a lot alike. I do see that comparison. He's a thicker Malcolm Kelly. I agree with that. Maybe the physicality of CeeDee Lamb with the size and the height of Malcolm Kelly, maybe. But hey, wide receiver 3 by committee. I think the bigger question mark for me is really not who's going to be out there at wide receiver 3. It's if Dylan Gabriel will ever even make the read to the third guy, because he tends to hone in on, one guy. But also the Stogner factor is the X factor here.
Yeah. Kenny Stills was 6'1".
Kenny Stills is actually a great comparison, Jay.
Kenny Stills was 6'1", and Nick Anderson is 6'4".
There's also a guy you guys won't know, but maybe Brian was, because I know Brian and someone else who had mentioned maybe some teams of the past, but there was a guy who played secondary and was moved to receiver and vice versa, and that was Andre Woolfolk.
Yeah,
for OU. Mm-hmm. Andre Woolfolk had big size on him.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think Nick Anderson will move to secondary, but you talk about just the size and can Nick Anderson be CeeDee Lamb? Yes, but I don't want to place those expectations on his shoulders just yet. Because that's the thing that us as all football fans is we like to get ahead of ourselves with comparisons and really it's just like I've said, it's going to be exciting in this wide receiver room to see who steps up, because at the beginning of spring it seems like we heard a lot of Andrew Anthony, and now it's kind of like, okay, this summer it's going to be a true battle for wide receiver 3. And a guy, Brody, that you brought up for wide receiver 3 is Jaquez Petaway. And that's a guy that all OU fans need to watch out for, because he is a dude that will be the second fastest guy in the wide receiver room behind Brennan Thompson. He's a very good route runner. He was obviously extremely talented coming out of high school. He's a guy I think that can make some noise in the summer.
I completely agree. He reminds me, and I know we're doing comparisons right now, he's got a little bit of Marvin Mims in him. I don't know if anyone else has seen that.
This is a good question by Jimmy. Will Jacoby Johnson play wide receiver defensive back? The plan is for him to start at defensive back, but I think he will end up playing wide receiver because his ceiling is higher at wide receiver.
I disagree.
Really?
Yeah, I'd rather have him at DB. And I think that's how it's going to be, and I think his ceiling is higher at DB. Jacoby Johnson can come in at DB, and he can be one of the top 4 guys right now.
Yeah, I just like him more at wide receiver because I've seen him I watched him play in high school on a live stream once, and the dude at defensive back, he seemed not as fluid as wide receiver, but if he can get coached up, he's like 6, is he 6'2", 6'3", something like that?
Yeah, he's 6'2", and you're assuming he should get coached up very well.
Yeah, by James.
And we saw Josiah Wagner come in and be the cornerback 2 at the end of spring.
He's going to be a guy that's going to make some noise this year.
Yeah, and corner is another one of those interesting spots. I know we got about 5 more minutes here in this live stream, so if you haven't, go ahead and put in your comments. We'll get to all those here in the remaining 5 minutes. But, again, if you haven't, make sure you subscribe. We're going to be doing these live streams quite a bit throughout the offseason. We'll try to do them as often as we can. And then the podcast is not going to stop. They're going to keep ramping up. And then we'll keep going with our softball videos on YouTube, and we've got some football videos in the works that will be coming up. We mentioned the Throwback Thursday, so stay tuned for all that. Make sure you subscribe and turn on post notifications. But, yeah, we got more comments rolling in on the comparisons. Jeremy, do you know anything about this comparison?
Joaquin Iglesias. I've heard that name, Jeremy. I know that for a fact.
Joaquin Iglesias was there. You had guys like him and Mark Clayton. And Joaquin Iglesias was a very underrated receiver for OU and did a lot of great things. I mean, he was one of my favorites to watch. He was after the Fagan, Damian Mackey era, Curtis Fagan there, where we won a national title with those. But Iglesias came in. I don't remember the exact years he was there, but I could see some Joaquin Iglesias comparison. John, I don't know about breakaway ability. Iglesias wasn't that guy who would just blow by you. And maybe, I can see that comparison. We talking about Nick Anderson?
Yeah, I think we're talking about Nick
I
Anderson.
think I could see that because I don't know that Nick Anderson's a blow-by guy like Gibson is, So that Iglesias could be a good comparison. And Mark Clayton was a guy that spent years in the Ravens organization when he was an NFLer. So
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just with the wide receiver room, there's just
last pass, man. I forgot about Manuel Johnson. I think Brian grew up the same time period I did watching OU. I forgot about Manuel Johnson, man. Did you see, speaking of guys in the past, OU's on the Steven Alexander's son? Did you guys see that?
Cooper Alexander. That's maybe we can touch on a couple minutes of recruiting, Brody, before we get out of here.
But that's Steven Alexander's son, who was a stud.
That's why you see the crystal balls for Cooper Alexander literally a couple minutes after he got offered.
The Cooper Alexander is a very underrated prospect in this class. I compare him a lot to Caden McIntyre and how their recruitments are. Is that this guy he plays at really small school football, and he's really just an extremely good athlete and someone that will, I think, have a chance to exceed expectations at the Power 5 level his freshman year. And also, Brody, I know I've seen some things on Twitter about maybe OU fans questioning where OU stands with Devon Mitchell after this offer. Maybe if you could speak on that.
I wouldn't question that too much.
Yeah.
But we got a question. Alexander was a stud, but who was better, him or Trent Smith? Jeremy.
I actually think, man, they were pretty much identical players. I think Steven Alexander was a little thicker than Trent Smith was. Trent Smith and Steven Alexander both had great memorable moments at the tight end position. And I tell you guys, from Oklahoma, I mean, they're Oklahoma guys. Also, Jermaine Gresham was an Oklahoma kid. The tight ends that Oklahoma high school football has put out has been pretty impressive, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Gresham size-wise was maybe the best tight end OU's ever had.
Well, you talk about one of the best tight ends in NFL history after they retire, in George Kittle, and he's out of Norman North. So Oklahoma has produced great tight ends over the years.
They also produced a tight end who absolutely destroyed Oklahoma for about 3 years straight when they played Iowa State.
Yep.
Charlie Kohler, wasn't he from?
Yes, Norman.
Yeah.
Backyard.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. He just destroyed OU.
And I do think probably Smith was better. He made more big catches, I think, Trent Smith did. I remember a Big 12 title game against, maybe it was K-State. He made a huge catch. Reminded me of Dwight Clark for San Francisco against the Cowboys. But
Jeremy Braun says Keith Jackson is the best OU tight end.
I give him that. That's correct. And actually, guys, had Keith Jackson had Keith Jackson played in an era where ball was thrown around the yard, he would have been unfreaking believable. But he spent most of his time blocking, and occasionally Jamel Holloway would step out of the option and lace one down the middle of the field. But if you remember, Keith Jackson, the announcer, made a huge call once with Keith Jackson, the tight end.
Yeah. So
you guys don't remember that, though, because I know you guys don't remember Keith Jackson.
No.
Sleep alive, probably.
Yeah, so we are approaching the time. We're about to, end this live stream very shortly. But, yeah, we appreciate everyone who's came out and been in the comments, everyone who's been commenting with us throughout this past 55 minutes. We do greatly appreciate it. Again, if you guys haven't, go ahead and subscribe. we are going to keep, doing these live streams as much as we can. We're going to have all the podcasts coming your way, all that, all the YouTube content. Again, like I said, subscribe, turn on post notifications. We appreciate all the comments and everything.
I was
Enjoy.
gonna say these. It brings back. I'm just an old guy who loves OU football, especially. But it's fun to get on here and talk about some of these games of the past and bring up these players. So yeah, you guys that know other OU fans, tell them about our YouTube channel here, and we can reminisce on these old times together. It's fun.
Yeah. Again, greatly appreciate it, everyone. And I think that's going to go ahead and wrap it up. Boomer.
Boomer.